So we need to innovate and adapt to change to bring the future into the present. That's why we do what we need to do. But we also need to make sure that there's a heavy implication from all of our innovation. I bring this up right now because I think it's really important. We have never been living in a world with as unparalleled and relentless innovation as we do right now. We talk about it a lot. We use these interesting synonyms like the Uberification of something, or we talk about how disruptive things are right now. But sometimes we don't stop to think about how innovation works. I think this really matters because the stakes have never been as high as they are right now. And most importantly, innovation moves from personal to industry for the first time ever. Let me explain exactly what I mean by that. But first, let's talk about the speed of innovation. So y'all are aware of Pepsi-Cola. You've heard of Pepsi. Do you know the very first Pepsi came out in sometime between 1893 and 1898? That was Pepsi number one, Pepsi-Cola as we know it. It took them until 1964 to make a new version of Pepsi, which was Diet Pepsi. But it then only took them until 1982 to make the next version, and then 1988, and then 1992, and faster and faster and faster. It took about 70 years to innovate Pepsi for the first time, only 20 years to innovate it for the second time, and then only 10, and 5, and 2. The same thing happens with, let's say, athletic shoes, where you have your first sort of Converse, now called the All-Star, made in 1917. It actually took until 1970, 1978, in that range for Nike to fully reinvent what the sole looked like in your athletic shoe. But a scant couple of years after that, we have a new version, a new version, a new version, a new version. We're innovating twice as quickly off of every previous innovation. This is a good example of innovation that everyone can understand. Your first transistor radio or real portable music player was in 1954, and it took quite a while until we had another sort of personal-sized portable music system. But only a couple of years after that did we have the Walkman and then the Discman, and this is a small, barely marketed consumer product called the iPod, one or two of you may have heard of. Any of you remember the very first slogan for the very first iPod? It was 1,000 songs in your pocket. 1,000 songs would now be a really crummy music player, right? Because only a few years after that, we went to the iPod Mini, then the iPod Nano, then the iPod Shuffle, then the iPod Video, then the second Nano, then the second Mini, then the third Mini, then another Shuffle, then more iPods, and iPhones, and iPads, and iPad Minis, and everything. Apple has reinvented their flagship product 20-some times in 15 years. It took Sony a decade to go from the Walkman to the Walkman 2. That's what I mean by this insane and relentless speed of innovation. It moves faster than ever before. And so we are already living in the future. So having an innovative approach to whatever you're doing is really important right now, more so than ever before.